Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, all of you, at FTCR for the work you do. One of the great things about this evening is going to a night where rage is the key word. Just thinking about it makes me warm and fuzzy all over. And then Jamie calls me and he's telling me about the evening. He says, now remember, it's nonpartisan, Robert, it's nonpartisan. And I'm thinking, Jamie, you guys piss off everybody. There would never be any doubt in my mind. Who would think that you're on their side regularly? It's not a possibility. So anybody from the IRS who's here checking out, be very aware of this. And particularly at a time when, and Mrs. Edwards spoke about this, we see and experience compromising, putting a finger up to make sure we know which way the wind's blowing before walking out of the house, poll testing, checking everything. The wonderful, courageous, and terrific street fighters at FTCR never, ever do that, and we never have to worry about that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank Mrs. Edwards and her husband on a matter that I've had personal experience with. We've been involved in a battle with Fox News. We were involved putting together some campaigns around the Nevada fight and the fight with the Congressional Black Institute. And Mr. Edwards, to his credit, not only was the first one to pull out of each of those debates, but he didn't pull out in a polite way and hiding behind schedule. He pulled out and he called it like it was, and he said what Fox News was doing, it was horrible, and he would not be a part of supporting that. So thank you for that courage. When Jamie called me about introducing Mike tonight, I, of course, was immediately thrilled. And I thought back to the days when Mike and I had started a group called Win Without War, when it was not like it is today, when a huge majority, is opposed to the war. There were very few people resisting and speaking out at the time. And I learned an enormous amount working with Mike back then. And one of the things that continues to stay with me, and you all saw the clip tonight, is we think Mike is totally honest and all, but let me tell you something. You know that gentle, warm, kind of engaging look that he has? Mike is a brutal fighter when you get into the trenches. And during the times when the attacks were coming from all over about being unpatriotic, this, that, or the other thing, Mike would go in front of the camera, he'd unleash that lovely, gentle smile, and he would tear the bastards to shreds, let me tell you, time after time after time. I had first gotten to know Mike, as many of you may have, through his emails that he sends out. And when I wasn't that active, and I heard about these emails. I thought it was like some secret society you had to be part of, you know, to get on Mike's list. Maybe then you could get the emails from him. So I remember one point, you know, very kind of hesitantly asking him if I could get the emails, and he smiled and said, sure. Then I started getting 3, 4, 5, 7 a day. It was more than Move On, and Move On hadn't even started at that point. So now, this last couple of months, my colleagues at Brave New Films and I have been focusing on short video pieces rather than the full-length films, which are, by the way, I was telling some of you, they're really an amazing tool. But no matter how many views we get on those short videos, there's no, I mean, we've gotten hundreds of thousands. There's nothing like when I get an email from Mike, because I'm on the list and he doesn't differentiate, and he'll say, "You've got to see this video." And I tell you, I feel like I've gotten the Oscar when it comes to Mike's. It is a spectacular feeling. And then when we start getting hundreds of thousands of views, I am still convinced that it's because Mike is sending it out to his list, and that is building, and why we're getting all these views. So with all of this, I thought it'd really be easy to introduce Mike, right? But then I remembered, there's a problem. Mike is an actor who doesn't seem to like the spotlight. Go figure. Mike is somebody who will not accept compliments. He hates gushing, and he will choke you if you start kvelling about his accomplishments. You know what kvelling is, Mike, right? Yeah, okay. So I started to think about all of the things that I really wanted to say tonight, and I realized that I couldn't. So I can't talk to you about Mike's integrity and what a difference that makes. When we were doing the anti-war organizing and we went out and reached out to hundreds of actors, it was Mike's reputation and integrity that got actor after actor to sign on at a time when it really was terrifying to speak out. So I wish I could tell you about that, but I can't. And I know for sure that he would not want me gushing about his sense of long-term commitment. We have a lot of people who go up and down with the mood of the moment. We have a lot of people who get into a fight for a second and then are gone. And I would love to describe what it means to know Mike takes these fights on, and he's there day after day, year after year, and doesn't rest until he's made a difference. But he would probably consider that gushing, so I won't talk about that. I know that I can't talk about what his warmth and his affection and his support has meant to me personally. There was some, in doing the documentary films that Jamie has talked about, there have been very, very dark days. There have been some horrific attacks from corporations with all kinds of resources. And Mike's personal reaching out, it'll be an email, it'll be a phone call, it'll be something that will come at exactly the right moment. And I'd love to go into detail with those stories, but I know he'd be very pissed off, so I won't tell you any of that. And finally, the last thing that I know he wouldn't want me to tell you is this amazing book that he has written. It is funny, it is personal, it's inspiring, and I'm so happy to be able to say this words, it's been an LA Times bestseller to add to Mike's career. But finally, I know what I can say, and I can say it so loudly, and I can say it so proudly, and I can say it without any rage. Citizen activist, not just for this year, but for many years to come, and dear friend, MikeFarrell.
Oh, silly me. I was just thumbing through the Nation magazine. I don't know if any of you have seen the latest issue, but there are a couple of really good things in it, but I'm silly of me to bring it up now. I want to thank you, Robert. You are my friend and my hero. And I want to thank you, Harvey, and Jamie, and Doug, and all of you who do this noble work at the FDCR and demonstrate such integrity and such goddamn doggedness. It's amazing. And I want to thank you for having the decency to have dinner separate my remarks from Elizabeth Edwards. Citizen activist. Well, thank you for this. I have to say I particularly like the citizen part. I do have some concerns about the activist piece. I'm not fond of the term because people use it to separate us from them, as if an activist is a boat rocker who causes discomfort, and of course we can't have that. Activists ask us to look at things we'd really rather not have to consider. So apparently some people think being active is not one of the responsibilities of citizenship. People parse the levels of and degrees of activism and break down the issues and determine which are legitimate and thus okay, worthy of our time. The Red Cross, sure. The Boys and Girls Clubs of America, absolutely. Fighting cancer, absolutely, because it attacks people we know and love. Fighting that is good. Fighting AIDS, well, it's also good, but it carries with it just a whisper of moral taint. The environment, sure, as long as you're not a crazy causing people to lose profits. Homelessness, absolutely, just don't bring any of them into my neighborhood. Education, who could be against that? But do those teachers really need a union? Health care, big mess, we gotta solve it, but please, no socialism. Corruption in government, well, you know, they're all bad, how can you fight City Hall? The war, terrible situation, but I'm not gonna go out in the street like some crazy hippie, and you gotta admit, the world is better off without Saddam Hussein. I remember being called a Saddam lover. Robert and I were called traitors, but the real tough one was they called us French. So issues, a $500 billion defense budget, which if you cut in half could take a bite out of all of the problems we've talked about. Well, you know, we have to leave these things up to the experts. Even if it's larger than the defense budgets of the rest of the world combined. Leave it to the experts. What people don't want to seem to get is that all of this activism and all of these issues are about the same thing. They are about recognizing and honoring the value and dignity of every human being on this planet. They're about trying to figure out what it means to be alive, what our purpose is in being here, or perhaps whether there is a purpose at all. It's about realizing that we're all the same. It's answering the question John Steinbeck posed in his book, Sweet Thursday. What's my life meant so far, and what can it mean in the time left to me? What have I contributed to the great ledger? I personally like the definition of our purpose here as described by two men of very different backgrounds using the same words, Rabbi Leonard Bierman and a former Catholic monk, the author Donald Spoto. Both said, our purpose in life is to become more fully human. Those words, that idea, is, in its simplicity and profundity, makes sense to me because they recognize and honor what links us. As a few people in this room know, I had a seminal experience many years ago at a time of terrible personal pain and confusion. And I was led by some friends to a halfway house, founded on the premise that all human beings are worthwhile, and even the most misbegotten and miserable, pain-filled failures are capable of being resurrected by love and truth. This place was known as the Manhattan Project because they felt discovery of self was at least as important as the atom bomb. And they took in junkies and drunks and whores and misfits and sexual deviates and people from jails and prisons and mental institutions and people from the gutter, people who had come to the end of the line and were facing the ultimate choice, which was to stand up, learn to tell the truth, or die. And thank God they took in one frightened, confused, miserable, naive, straight guy. And I was taught there by these people, these examples of human detritus, that all human beings want the same thing: to be loved, to have attention paid, and to be respected. And with all of these people, viewed by some as wasted piles of human garbage, I was challenged to strip away the masks and expose the weeping, bleating, frightened core being inside me, that tiny, hated, mewling, puking, unacceptable me that I feared, were to be exposed, would be met with jeering and ridicule and hatred and certain rejection. Along with the junkies and the whores, and by some of them, I was challenged to not only admit that person existed inside me, but to hold him up and accept him, to love him, and not only make him visible, but to ask that he be accepted and loved and respected by others. And in that process, I was moved to realize that all of us suffer from the same loneliness, the same sense of unloveliness, the same panic-stricken, terrifying fear of being unacceptable. And that process and those lessons allowed me to begin the journey of becoming a man in this world. And it challenged me to accept the responsibility of loving myself and loving others. So I've gone about trying to do that, and in so doing, I've been labeled an activist. I've worked in many areas on behalf of what I think are the inherent rights of human beings, many of whom I see as invisible, so used to being subjugated and terrorized that they do not know they deserve to be honored and respected and treated with dignity. And this trek has taken me to many places and taught me many lessons, some of them quite painful, all of them valuable. So, because I believe all of the many issues facing us are interconnected and interlocking jigsaw puzzle, let me mention here only two, because they are two that my fellow citizens more often than not don't want to hear about or know about. Prisons. I hate prisons. Warehouses. They are human abattoirs where whatever vestiges of selfhood, dignity, and honor that may still cling are stripped from those consigned to them in the process of their dehumanization while we look away. Capital punishment. I despise the death penalty, not only because it is the very antithesis of everything I believe, but because it undercuts and invalidates the human spirit, dehumanizing not only its victim, but all of us who take part in it, support it, or allow its use. Killing one whom you've deemed different and unworthy only teaches that the different are disposable. And that this lesson has been well learned by our young is demonstrated daily in places like Bagram, Afghanistan, Abu Ghraib, Iraq, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as well as black holes run by our CIA and some soundproofed rooms in America's jails and prisons. Jails and prisons can be improved. They can serve a useful purpose. And may I say that an examination is going forward here in California called the Commission for the Fair Administration of Justice, and that is the creature, and it exists only because of the courage of our friend John Burton. But the death penalty is killing us all by dehumanizing us all. And those of us who wish to abolish it are not naive. We understand that there are people who must be kept, that all people must be kept safe from those who would do harm. And clearly there must be a way to separate from society those who cannot or will not live by the rules, while a hopeful society would create a process by which the violent and lawless would be treated and healed until they could be safely allowed to walk among us again. The sad truth is that we know that there are some who are so damaged, so ruined by bitter life experience, that they, gnarled stumps of what were once vital beings, may never be trusted to be free for fear they will do harm to others, because they think only of themselves and their own grief, and they don't care about the harm they do. Think Dick Cheney, for example. But even in the face of human degradation, there's reason to hope. We can become more fully human. I believe we're on a journey from the caves to the stars. There will always be those among us who are so fearful or greedy that they will go to any lengths to trick us or frighten us or drag us back to the caves, but the stars are where we belong. And I believe that people of goodwill who come together and actively strive toward them will light the way for the rest. Thank you for this recognition.